Deploy to learn. Reframe release as the beginning of insight, not the end of creation. Ask, is this good enough to help someone today?
Welcome to the Innovation Forge.
In today's episode, we visit the Forge Bellows. Let's see how innovation meets artistry as we forge something extraordinary together.
You are listening to the Innovation Forge, the #1 podcast on adaptive enrollment management, exploring the data, marketing, and strategy that fuels higher education. Here's your host, David Dysart.
Welcome to the Fieldsmith Register, to the Finish Line Fog, a guided log of the quiet hazards that stall our work near the finish. These fogs, fractures, and loops that keep good projects from becoming real ones. I'm your narrator, David Dysart, but I'm bringing you this field guide of the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. In each entry, we name the stall, trace its sign, and offer a way forward. Not all work needs more effort. Sometimes it needs a name. Let's see how the Finish Line Fog takes shape today. Introduction on the Finish Line Fog. As recorded by the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, filed under the first entry in the Fieldsmith's register. They rarely quit. That's the first thing to understand about those who falter near the finish. They don't slam the forge door, tear up the blueprints, or shout that it wasn't worth it. No, the ones who stall near the end, your teammates, your colleagues, yourself, simply slow, pause, hesitate, and in that space, the fog creeps in. The Finish Line Fog is not failure. It's the quiet, heavy pause that settles in after momentum should carry you. It clouds judgment, distorts progress, and makes small steps feel like mountains. The work is often 85%, 90%, sometimes 99% complete. Sometimes the project is even live. But the final move, that click, the send, the push, the ask, it doesn't happen. Not because of a flaw in the work, but because of a fog in the mind. Some can call it burnout, others mistake it for caution. But those who've studied the forge fires know better. This handbook, the Fieldsmith Register, contains observed hazards from years of work with builders, senders, dreamers, and finishers. These aren't productivity tips. They're field notes from the emotional and behavioral wilds we must cross between creation and completion. Each entry in the register is a distinct facet of the Finish Line Fog, given form, story, and strategy. You'll find momentum fractures, where rhythm dissolves, cognitive traps, where fear or identity twist the path, fear behaviors, where recursive patterns in inaction stall progress, and launch disconnects, where done doesn't mean used. This is not a manual for shipping faster. It is a lens to help you see when the work is adrift and to give it a name. Because once something has a name, it can be spoken aloud. And once it's spoken, it can be moved. So read not just to understand the fog. Read to find the handle again. It may be cold now, but I guarantee it still fits your hand. Let the work continue. Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, witness to the fog and the flame. Entry 1. The Fieldsmith's Register. Filed by the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. Preserved in the northern annex of the Forgeworks Grimoire. The Candle's Edge. Field mark. Closer than they know, quieter than it should be. Encounter example. Maya had been working the yield list all spring. Her notes were precise, her calls logged, her follow-ups templated and scheduled. Then, with just 5 names left uncommitted, she paused. "They've seen the emails," she said. "They know what to do. I don't want to bother them." But those 5 never enrolled. Just one last call away. Hazard classification. Momentum fracture. Definition. The candle's edge is the quiet stall that occurs when someone is just steps from completion, but no longer recognizes that the end is near. Emotional energies dim, effort wavers, and momentum fades despite the flame being lit. Psychological roots. Progress blindness. Losing sight of how much has already been accomplished. Ambiguity aversion. Stalling in the face of unclear final steps. Cognitive fatigue. Burnout from sustained effort without emotional payoff. Fear finality. Hesitation rooted in the anxiety of what comes next. Common signs in the wild. Final tasks like orientation, registration, or ID photo upload go untouched. Students report waiting for something, but they can't actually name what. Email open rates dip after deposit. Phrases like, "I'm almost done, I think," or "What else do I need to do?" Staff feel surprised by sudden silence from seemingly strong prospects. Reforging strategy. Name it. Use the candle's edge to recognize what's happening and having power over it. Checkpoint mapping. Share clear visuals of what is already complete and what is definitively left. Last step rituals. Create a final light the candle task that confirms closure. Example, a confirmation button or celebratory email. Micro nudges. Use personalized encouragement. You're one click away, over general reminders. Use cases. For staff, use in post-deposit phase to identify students who stop engaging suddenly. Build Candle's Edge flags in Slate, 90% portal completion plus 7 days of inactivity. Call campaigns. Use affirming scripts like, "It looks like you're right at the end. Want to double check that with me?" For students. Visual tracker of completed steps to reinforce momentum. Email subject lines. "Yes, this really is your last step." Short, mobile-friendly checklists with progress confirmation badges. Lore fragment. Flames do not roar at the end, they whisper. That's why the final step is so easy to miss. Torchkeeper's margin notes. Ember Ledger, Volume 2. Entry number 2. The Fieldsmith's Register. Filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom. Scribed faintly across a draft email marked awaiting feedback. The cold handle. Field mark. The work came back, but the grip was gone. Encounter example. Elena finished the portal update and sent it to stakeholders for a review. The draft sat for 10 days. When the feedback finally arrived, it was minor. But Elena was deep into fall travel prep by then. "I'll get to it after this trip," she said. She never did. The portal still shows last year's content. Hazard classification. Momentum fracture. Definition. The cold handle describes a project that was handed off for feedback, approval, or next steps. But when it returned, no one picked it back up. Momentum had cooled, the rhythm was lost, and the project, while viable, sits idle and unclaimed. Psychological roots. Momentum misfire. Work loses tempo during feedback gaps. Priority displacement. Other projects fill the space during the pause. Emotional detachment. Energy invested in the first push doesn't regenerate after waiting. Completion disconnect. It's almost done becomes it's no longer mine to finish. Common signs in the wild. Projects sent out for review that are never reactivated. Final feedback received, but not acted on due to time or energy loss. Launch-ready work that no one feels connected to. Staff say, "Oh, right, I still need to do that," but deprioritize it. Files or campaigns marked final feedback in, but untouched for weeks. Reforging strategy. Build a re-entry plan. Before handing off, set a reactivation date and next action. Appoint a handle holder. Assign someone to monitor and relight the project post-feedback. Reduce review gaps. Set deadlines for responses and keep the coals warm. Reignite with intention. If a project returns cold, revisit purpose and value before resuming. Use cases. For staff. Communications, reports, and forms sent for approval but never picked back up. Campaigns delayed after minor edit feedback arrives late. Projects paused for quick review that never regained steam. For coaches and managers, encourage handoffs with scheduled follow-ups. Audit where feedback loops break final momentum. Help staff name and revive cold handle projects without guilt. Lore fragment. The handle cooled not from disuse, but from waiting too long to return to it, and so it sat, useful still, but untouched. From the emberless ledger, entries compiled by the watchers of unfinished steel. Entry number 3, the Fieldsmith Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, copied from the edge of a half-cent launch checklist. The drift delay. Field mark. Everyone thought someone else had the wheel. Encounter example. The new visit confirmation workflow had been drafted, tested, and approved. 3 team members had touched it on its final week, but when the deadline passed, nothing launched. Each member and each person had assumed someone else was going to do the final press by the time they realized visit season had already begun. Classification hazard. Momentum fracture. Definition. The drift delay occurs when someone or some project is nearly complete, but it loses that forward momentum because no one is clearly responsible for final execution. The work is done, but the handoff never happened. As a result, the project drifts. Not into failure, but into quiet irrelevance. Psychological roots. Diffusion of responsibility. Classic bystander effect in project settings. Role ambiguity. Unclear task ownership in final phases. Assumed redundancy. Everyone believes someone else is handling it. Cognitive offloading. Team members move on mentally before the work is actually done. Common signs in the wild. Tasks are marked complete, but no one confirms execution. I thought you were sending that. Moments. Projects are described as done, even though no user-facing result has occurred. Handoffs happen informally or not at all. Follow-ups fade as everyone turns to new priorities. Reforging strategy. Confirm the closer. Explicitly assign who pushes the final button, email, or export. Use the drift check. Ask, who is responsible for making this real? Handoff ritual. Include a launch baton or sign-off step in project plans. Public closure. Announce the launch internally to mark the moment and cement accountability. Use cases for staff. Communication plans with multiple contributors and no final sender. Slate forms, exports, or emails where build and launch are separated. Projects with rotating ownership across departments. For coaches and managers. Build final action checklists that include named responsibilities. Review recent delays for signs of drift, not failure. Use the drift delay language to raise attention without blame. Lore fragment. The wheel was set, the course drawn, the fire hot. But no hand touched the rudder, so the ship floated, beautiful and useless. From the fog scroll of silent triumphs. Hazard classification. Launch disconnects. The Fieldsmith Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, recovered from the soot margins of an abandoned launch calendar. The Waning forge. Field mark. It didn't fail, it just cooled. Encounter example. The cross-department campaign had a weekly meeting at first, then bi-weekly. Then someone was on vacation, then they stopped sending agendas. The draft materials still live in a shared drive somewheres. No one declared it done or dead, but no one has touched it in months. Hazard classification. Momentum fracture. Definition. The waning forge occurs when initial project energy fades before launch. Not because of failure or flaw, but because no one is tending the fire. Progress slows, urgency dissipates, and the team loses rhythm. The task remains, but the spark is gone. Psychological roots. Lack of ownership. No one feels directly responsible for moving it forward. Distributed priorities. Competing tasks pull attention elsewhere. Pacing breakdown. Early progress wasn't built on sustainable cadence. Ambiguous value. The project never gained enough weight to demand completion. Common signs in the wild. Project files are left untouched for weeks, with no closure. Team members still refer to their work as in progress, but they don't act on it. Regular check-ins drop off quietly. Materials exist, but no timeline is active. The task lingers on a to-do list with no real movement. Reforging strategy. Heat check. Pause task. Is this still worth doing? If yes, recommit with adjusted scope and timeline. Reignite or retire. Name it directly. Either relaunch with intention or archive it with clarity. Assign a bellows rail. Appoint a single owner to reignite forward motion. Adjust the flame. Scale down the scope to make completion of at least the first step attainable. Use cases for staff. Cross-functional initiatives with unclear ownership. Creative or comms projects started with excitement but left drifting. Strategy rollouts that begin with workshops or slide decks but never go live. For coaches and managers, encourage team members to declare project status explicitly. Active, paused, or archived. Use Waning Forge language to break inertia without assigning blame. Host a quarterly heat audit to surface cooled projects and decide their fate. Lore fragment. Even a bright fire forgets to burn when no one watches the coals. And so, the work sleeps, not dead, but waiting. Ashkeeper's reflection, logged in the Ember Watcher's Index. The Fieldsmith Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the Yielding Loom, recovered from the Ash Grove Annex, under a curled pile of abandoned drafts. The Perfection Mirage. Field mark. The better it gets, the harder it becomes to let it go. Encounter example. Trevor had written the new counselor outreach sequence 4, 5 times. The data was clean, the message was warm, the segments well targeted, but every time it neared approval, he found a flaw, a missing column, a sharper hook, one more variable to test. Fall travel began with the campaign still unsent, sitting in drafts under final_final_3B. Hazard classification. Cognitive and emotional trap. Definition. The Perfection Mirage appears near the end of a creative or strategic task. It tempts the staff member to believe that with just one more tweak, everything will align perfectly. In doing so, it delays impact, breaks momentum, and often leaves the project unfinished. Psychological roots. Fear of judgment. Perfection is safer than exposure. Control seeking. Mistaking precision for mastery. Procrastination by polish. Avoiding finality by extending the refinement phase. Imposter syndrome. If it's not perfect, it's not ready. Thinking. Common signs in the wild. Files labeled final 2, or new final, or final_real. Teams say, we just want to tighten it up a bit more, weeks after initial readiness. Testing multiple versions with no clear timeline for launch. Decision-making bottlenecked by one perfectionist stakeholder. Delay in sending communication due to constant edits or hesitation. Reforging strategy. Name the mirage. Normalize this as a phase, not a truth. Version lock. Declare a version complete enough, and schedule a follow-up iteration instead of indefinite tweaks. Deploy to learn. Reframe release as the beginning of insight, not the end of creation. Build a launch threshold. Define what ready means before work begins, and stick to it. Use case for staff. Project leads stuck in near-launch loops for communications, reports, or presentations. New staff unsure how polished something needs to be before sharing it. Supervisors hesitating to approve good enough work out of fear of backlash or optics. For coaches and managers, identify when quality control becomes fear control. Encourage minimum viable launches with pre-scheduled revision sprints. Use post-launch reflection as a team learning ritual. Lore fragment. Beware the mirage that sharpens with every step forward. You'll die of thirst with water behind you. Whispers from the Mirror Anvil, as recorded by Threadweaver. The Fieldsmith's Register, filed by Threadweaver, keeper of the Yielding Loom, copied in a perfect hand from version 7.4.2 of an unreleased draft. The Gilded Loop, field mark. It's moving, but it's not going anywhere. Encounter example. The new visit experience workflow had gone through 6 meetings, 4 draft versions, and 3 redesigns. It looked better every time, but no one could say when it would launch. "Let's revisit this once the new web module is finalized," someone said again. The next meeting was already on the calendar. Hazard classification. Cognitive and emotional traps. Definition. The Gilded loop is a cycle of constant revision, feedback, and discussion that disguises itself as progress. The project looks better with each pass, but because it's never declared done, it never leaves the circle. The loop is gilded, refined, admired even, but unbroken. Psychological roots. Perfection feedback spiral. More feedback creates more revisions, indefinitely. Avoidance through process. Meetings and improvements replace decision-making. False momentum. Reworking is mistaken for progress. Fear of completion. As long as we're tweaking it, we're not failing. Common signs in the wild. A new version or revision every time the team meets. No launch date ever firmly set, just more edits. Projects become regular agenda items, but never exit. Staff described the project as in progress for months, despite clear readiness. The process, not the purpose, becomes the focus. Reforging strategy. Declare a final pass. Commit to one last revision with a launch date set. Break the loop visibly. Create a loop breaker moment. Feedbacks end, actions begin. Shift from better to live. Ask, is this good enough to help someone today? Audit the review cycle. Track how many rounds a project has been through and what's truly changed. Use cases. For staff. Communication flows rewritten repeatedly, but never sent. Portal or workflow designs constantly refreshed. Cross-functional teams who meet regularly, but never commit to final action. For coaches and managers, help team notice when revisions have lost strategic value. Frame version 1 as a beginning, not a compromise. Call out gilded loops gently with a path to forward motion. Lore fragment. They circled the flame, shaping it finer with every turn, but the forge cooled behind them, and the blade was never struck. Cycle Keeper's Testament, sealed inside the gilded mirror case. The Fieldsmith Register, filed by the Threadweaver, keeper of the yielding loom, etched into the margin of a discarded rollout timeline. The twice-forged fallacy, field mark. If it isn't done yet, perhaps it never was the right project to begin with. Encounter example. Jenna was leading the overhaul of their inquiry form. The layout was sound, logic clean, and testing successful. But just before launch, she hesitated. Actually, what if we redid the whole first section, using cards instead of drop-downs? Weeks passed, the form never launched. The new idea faded too. The old form stayed live, untouched. Hazard classification. Cognitive and emotional traps. Definition. The twice-forged fallacy is the belief that if you start over, the outcome will somehow be better. It draws staff away from the finish line by casting doubts on the project's worth, method, or even the structure, just before it would have been completed. Psychological roots. Avoidance of commitment. Reworking feels safer than releasing. Fear of evaluation. A new project avoids scrutiny the current one will face. Novelty bias. A fresh idea always feels more exciting than a nearly finished one. All or nothing thinking. If it's not perfect, it needs to be fully rebuilt. Common signs in the wild. Project teams propose total redesigns close to deadlines. Original goals are abandoned in favor of scope drift. Hesitation to launch becomes disguised as improvement. Stakeholders express doubt only at 90% completion. The original work is neither launched nor fully replaced. Reforging strategy. Define done early. Anchor the team to a clear, fixed finish line before new ideas emerge. Flag late-stage redesigns. Ask, is this solving a real problem, or are we avoiding release? Create a backlog, not a detour. Store post-launch improvement ideas separately. Reward the ship. Publicly celebrate finishing, not just ideation. Use case for staff. project managers tempted to abandon something 85% done for a better option. Communicators who continually revise already approved drafts. Staff working on portals, forms, emails, or workflows that never go live. For coaches and managers, build systems where feedback has a window, after which projects move forward. Encourage launch first, polish later mindsets. Track idea abandonment patterns to surface recurring avoidance triggers. Lore fragment. The blade that returns to the forge too often becomes brittle. Let it strike or let it rust. Anvil Minder's Lament. Recorded in the dust scripture of burnt efforts. Outro. That was today's entry from the Fieldsmith's Register. If the signs felt familiar, you're not alone. These stalls don't mean the work is broken, they mean it's waiting. Waiting for a name, waiting for your hand, waiting to be finished. But keep the register nearby. In my experience, the fog returns often, but so do we. Until next time, watch the coals, mark the signs, and finish what's nearly done.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please grow the guild by rating and reviewing the Innovation Forge podcast, or sharing it with a colleague who needs to hear about these creative crossovers in education. The best review or comment every month will get an ebook of my book, of course. Particularly great ones will also be featured on future episodes. Thank you so much for joining me in the workshop today. Remember to strike true, and let's forge something extraordinary together.